The last time we potted, Ben Cruz was with us, and we were just, GP2 is back. Unfortunately, James Wiseman is gone. GP2 is not really back. GP2 is on the shelf, and he may not get back until very late in the season. So prior to us having the GP2 Wiseman conversation, it was on the basis of like, yeah, GP2 is playing. But now, what do you feel about that trade after the Warriors either got bamboozled or they knew what they were getting and they just needed to get off the Wiseman contract, and they're kind of fibbing about what they knew about GP's injury?
Oh, that's interesting. Um, I think I'm gonna lean towards they got a little swindled just because I know I probably have a higher opinion on Wiseman than most, but also like you make that trade because you realize that you need to give this season a shot, unlike trying to compete and trying to contend. You owe it to the veterans, you owe it to Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and the guy you bring back is literally like what they want, a guy they've played with, a guy they really like, and a guy who's good, but he might not be available to like the playoffs. Like we don't know. He's getting reevaluated in like a month or something like that. But I think you're swindled in the sense of like you needed someone who can come help right now. You needed someone who can fit into the offense and contribute right now. But GP2 might not be able to contribute all year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Wiseman already wasn't contributing, but I don't know. I feel like I've changed my tune a little bit the last couple of days.
Okay, so we do have one game of Wiseman in Detroit. He sort of, if I mean, it felt exactly how Wiseman and Golden State happened, except he was allowed to stay on the court. He wasn't, he wasn't, he didn't have to be moved off quickly to bring in somebody else because all of a sudden the Warriors were were losing. In Detroit, they want to win games, but he's not going to be pulled off the court because all of a sudden he comes in and they're a -5 in 2 minutes with him playing.
Yeah. And then that's kind of what happened, right? In the first Detroit game, he goes in, they go down a little bit. You see a lot of the same stuff you saw with the Warriors, but I still feel like a lot of the same stuff you saw with the Warriors was potential, was, scoring 30 points in Brooklyn, although that was a throwaway game. Like I don't think that many people are able to just kind of score 30 like that. But, Wiseman, I think he's got something to prove to himself that he could like score and that he's meant to be there. And I think that's why you see sometimes in his offense that he gets the ball and damn well he's not passing it.
Yeah.
So I think he's got to get a little bit of that out of the way and then start playing like some team basketball to stick around long term, because you see the talent, but I think he's like no one's gonna want to pass it. Ty Jerome never passed it to him. He knew he wasn't getting the ball back.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this because you think about where the NBA is going, and it was not surprising, but it was a little bit of a change in philosophy when they drafted him, right? Because the reason they won titles is because they either had a big man like Bogut, who was the ultimate team player and who just sacrificed all of his offense for defense, or they just said, forget the center position. We're just going small. Like, we don't even need it. So drafting Wiseman was a strategic change for them, a philosophy change for them.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Wiseman I wonder if they thought Wiseman could be a big and just play 4 out with one big man, and that he had the talent to, kind of be a little bit of a point center in a sense too. He gets the ball, if no double is there, then he makes a move. If the defense is running around, then he's the guy who makes the play. And if you watch him play, the second he gets the ball, his head goes down. So you know that he's not actively looking for that. So it just seemed like hindsight is 2020, obviously, but coming off of 19 and drafting him and making that decision to sort of change philosophy about what your team is, I wonder, even though Joe Lacob probably feels that James Wiseman is still talented, I wonder if they would go back if they were being honest and change that pick
They're
just
they're
from the
taking they're taking
philosophy perspective.
Halliburton. They're taking Halliburton. If you know what you know now and you get to go back and redo that pick, you are drafting Tyrese Halliburton or LaMelo, one of the two. But, Lacob thought that Wiseman was Embiid. Wrong. He's not. Can he be Karl Anthony Towns? Probably not. Can he be like DeAndre Ayton on what that guy brings on a scoring level? I think so. I think that's still in the realm of possibility because I'm a little lower on DeAndre Ayton to begin with. The guy's not an all-star, so I think he can become that. And we'll see. Time will tell.
But do you think that they would ever go that route again? Like, let's say a big man becomes available, like a DeAndre Ayton. Do the Warriors go, oh, we want to target this guy who can switch, who maybe is not going to get too many rebounds, but he can actively play defense? Or do they just go, you know what? This is just not our philosophy. This is never going to work with Steph Curry until he's done playing.
I think so if they went back into that draft with that philosophy of I just don't I think if they were given the opportunity to do it again and say next year or 2 years, Steph, Clay, and Draymond are on the way out, so they could technically do it now. But if you had the option in the Wiseman class, I wish I had this on record. I know it's going to sound like BS now that I'm saying it now. I initially wanted to trade down for an Onyeka Okongwu. I thought that he was like the smart pick, and he was at least certified going to at least be good. And looking back at that, obviously he's like just a younger athletic Looney, right? So he would have just been perfect. But yeah, I think if you go back to that specific draft, they don't switch up. They don't do the swing for the fences pick. They don't, do the philosophy changing swing for the fences pick. I think if you give them the opportunity to do it again in a year or two, they might try it again because we might have a new wave of Golden State Warrior players coming in anyway. So,
yeah. What do you think about Bob Myers's disposition, his comments on the GP2 thing? He seemed, I didn't feel like he was. I don't want to say he's not telling truth because that is absolutely. I'm not going to question anything. Who knows about that? But when they made that pick, we were just like, oh, so we're not worried about GP2's health. He barely started playing again. Like we even mentioned it, I think, on the show with Ben. So for them to go like, yeah, we had no idea, Portland did X, Y, and Z. We need the league to get into this. I don't know if I buy that 100%. Like you had to know, like the first thing you ask Portland when you're doing this deal is, we need to see his medicals. Like he just came back. Like we need to see, what's going on there. And I just don't buy that they went, oh yeah, Portland's just like, yeah, he's good. And they're like, okay, let's make the deal. Like it just doesn't seem to work that way. So that's why I was questioning whether or not it was like maybe 75-25 that it was about getting out of under that deal. But I don't know. He just didn't seem confident. He seemed a little like flustered up there. I didn't sense that he was like, I don't know, like when GMs make these deals, you usually see like they're just like, yes, this is going to help us win. And he was just up there going like, it is what it is. We can't comment on it. And we were kind of joking about it at Ethan's event about how he just kind of looked checked out, right? Like that's kind of how he looked in that moment. And maybe it was because he feels the heat from being the guy who signs off on that deal. But I don't know. What do you think about Bob?
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that because you're right. Like, yeah, most GMs, when they make a move and they get a player, it's their name behind it. Basically, everyone knows that the GM made the trade in different teams, different situations. But yeah, you're right. He didn't like sound super psyched about having GP2 back. But I mean, there was that moment Friday night, right? Was it last Friday against like the Lakers or something where he came and sat down next to Bob as if to show like, they're gonna pick me. I'm gonna stay. But you're right. I wonder if like, someone mentioned, and it's true, like the trade deadline, you're able to make trades this entire year.
Yeah.
Like there's not a window of like, okay, here's the trade deadline. You're only able to make trades the day before. And I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely, some desperation tactics in there from, I feel like the Warriors were battling within, the front office and the coaching staff. The front office is like, play this guy and like, we want to keep Wiseman, and the coaching staff is like, we can't play him. We need someone who's going to help win. The players are like, we can't play him. We need someone who's going to help us win. And I think Bob having to mediate that, and then Bob maybe making like a desperation move, to bring back GP2 at the last minute. And it's like, you can't, like, maybe you just didn't have time to worry about. It sounds very not Bob Myers like, because I'd like to think he's one of the smartest GMs, one of
And
the
I
most
think I
strategic
think he
GMs,
is.
but
He's also one of the most thoughtful speakers when it comes to those guys, right? Like
yeah,
he's he seems like he's an honest man, and he is thinking about what he's going to say. He's not just pitch man. He's not just spewing out, Joe Lacob marketing ideas. He does seem like he is someone who has his own thoughts. So that's why it was so interesting, because I don't expect him to be like a rah-rah guy. That's just not who he is. But after last year, we were talking about this, and when it came to Wiseman, the worst thing for Wiseman was that the Warriors won the title, because it solidified the blueprint for how to do it again, which is, it's just Draymond and Looney. Like, if Wiseman cannot do these things, then he cannot play in this lineup with these guys. So I'm pulling back and saying, not only was it the worst thing for Wiseman, it was the worst thing for Lacob's leverage as maybe the James Wiseman voice in the front office, right? Because if he's still like, Wiseman's the future, and then they go, we won this title without this guy. Like, that just shows you how our philosophy in basketball does not work with what he's good at. And then you can even go further and say, winning that title last year kind of solidified Bob Myers's style. So maybe he's coming into this thing going like, all this stuff that we collectively, but me, leading, won a title, and maybe I need a little bit more, a little bit more pats on the back, a little bit more money here, because nobody expected us to do it. And so it's kind of interesting the way that thing works. And Bill Simmons always talks about Pat Riley's quote about the disease of more. Like, when you win a title, and this is how I remember him. I don't remember where I read it, multiple places, but after the Lakers won a title, he's like, not only is Magic and Kareem and James Worthy doing commercials, but like the ninth guy on the bench now has a commercial. And so he thinks that he's made it. And so you come into the next season, and these guys think that they're the badasses around town, and how do you get them to come back and play like they're still the ninth man, and great and grind on that. So that is also something to think about, that I don't think we necessarily thought about at the beginning of the season. Is
yeah,
there's some folks who made the success that is not just Steph and Draymond and Clay, because those guys solidified their core as Hall of Famers. They were probably Hall of Famers before, but that was like the icing on the cake. But what about Steve Kerr? What about Bob Myers? What about Lacob? Like, how does the success change the way that those three guys look at things? Does Kerr ride out in the sunset with Steph? Like, is that it? Would that be it for him, or is he interested in like trying to coach young players? Because that 2020 season, he didn't seem like he was that happy coaching
yeah.
that team.
I mean, I feel like he should. I feel like there's there's talk of, those Warriors championships with KD didn't count because they were a super team. Those allegations, like, Steve Kerr has some of his own of being handed a team that was ready for the championship, and he goes and coaches them and wins 4. Although I don't necessarily buy that. I think Steve Kerr definitely helped a lot. But yeah, I think if he wanted to, change up the narrative a little bit, he should stay. He should see how these guys play. I wanted to say though, for Bob Myers, that, I mean, he kind of did hit it out of the park again with, although we're not good, but like the idea of what Dante DiVincenzo is, like, he's been awesome. That guy's not going to resign. Like, what you were able to do with the two-way guys, I'd like to see the two-way minutes of the entire year for all teams. I'm sure Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome are probably at the top there. Like, they shouldn't have to be. I think Bob Myers, although the team is not doing that well, I think he did have a lot of great offseason signings. Maybe you could make fun of or push back on the Jermichael Green one, but other than that, like all of them have been great. It's really just the guys who are on the multi-year deals that are feels like can't
Uh,
aren't playing the best.
ultimately, what it is it's those three rookies, and not the three young players. Now it's the two young players, right? And I'm not including Baldwin and Ryan Rollins in that. It is the Kuminga, Moody, Wiseman trio. Now, as a trio, Kuminga's probably slightly better. Moody is way down, and Wiseman was also down from what they expected. So trying to put those three in lineups that worked for them, that changes what the other guy, like Steph, Clay, and Dre, they're probably just like, quit messing with this stuff, because we're having to play with the new lineup. But on the other side, it's like, no, we have to figure out a way to get these three guys to the best of their abilities. So that's really what the whole two timeline thing has become. It's not what it was last year. It is, how do you mix these guys so that they are good on the court and they don't screw up what the vets are doing?